Every club.
Every day.
The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Newcastle podcast. My name is Michael Grahamsall and today I'm here to give my immediate post-match reaction of the fixture against Atletico Madrid in the Sela Cup. Now, while the lasses were also defeated 2-0 by Atleti's ladies, we are just going to be talking about the men's game against Atletico after Ian covered our 2-0 draw with Espanyol last night while I was in Edinburgh seeing Oasis. So I never saw the game, which is why I wasn't on that. And I say that purely because I'm going to apologise in advance for my voice inevitably being atrocious in about 10 minutes' time. But I'm going to do my best. We'll get through. And, well, I am really sorry if I sound terrible. But we'll get there. So going into the game, I don't think there was many surprises with the lineup. We knew it would be youngsters on the bench. We knew we were going to see pretty much a completely different 11. But I actually thought the game started at a really good tempo. And actually on that note, before I go in too much into the game, I think we've been really quite smart about who we've played so far and how we've played. We've played teams that are really active, high pressing for the most part, which in theory, doesn't matter who you play on the opening day or whatever, you're going to come up against a team that probably presses you quite high. And if you're not prepared for that, you're going to lose the game. It turns out that we're going to play Aston Villa and Liverpool. So, in the opening weeks, you kind of need to be up against them teams who are, going to press you high. And that's exactly what Atletico Madrid did early on. They pressed us high and we made a number of errors at the back at the start of the game. But I actually thought the first half we were pretty decent. There was a spell in sort of the middle 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes in the middle, probably 20th to the 35th minute, should we say, where Atleti were much the better side. But other than that, I actually thought we were really good. The first moment of real danger for us comes when Tino Livramento loses the ball high on the left. Madrid double up on him. They did an excellent job of that all game. But they're used to doing that against the likes of Vinicius Jr., Real Madrid. Probably some of the players that are there, they'll have watched the tapes of when Atletico Madrid did it against Messi numerous times, and they certainly weren't bad at doing that. But yeah, and we certainly don't have Lionel Messi up front. But yeah, they did an excellent job of playing through the lines after they won the ball back. It made its way to Llorente, who isn't really a right back. I'd say he's more of an attacking player, but he's played there quite a lot for Atleti. He squared the ball across to the other side, and it was excellently cleared by Kieran Trippier. I did have visions of the same thing happening that happened with Alex Murphy while we were over in Asia, where it just went into the top corner. But no, Trippier, as I pretty much said during that game, experience was the bit that shone through. Trippier just knocked it out for a corner. Then a few minutes later, it was Tino again who made a mistake. He was pretty much bodied by Simeone's son, which, it's weird seeing a father on the touchline and a son on the wing, but it was actually quite nice. He sent his shot. I think it actually went out for a throw-in. It was a really, really poor shot. But there was a lot of danger early on from Atleti. But our best move came pretty much when the centre attacking midfielder Almeida just sort of gave up because he felt like he was fouled in the centre of the pitch, and that's really not something you see a lot from Simeone's side. So if that starts to happen through the start of the season, you can imagine he's not going to play for them very much until he gets rid of that. But on our side, it was great from Gordon. He linked really well, actually, with Ashby to find Elanga. Elanga's touch just kind of let him down, which was a shame. That happened probably a few times during the game. Elanga wasn't the best on the ball in regards to final product. Dribbling was fantastic. I think first half, I don't think anyone was getting near him. But second half, well, I'll get into that a bit later, I guess. But yeah, the corresponding corner from that move finds Joe Linton, who peels off to sort of the back post. Free header. the first of about 5 during the game, and he just heads it over the bar. Probably the worst header he did out of the lot, to be fair. But yeah, it was pretty harmless. Unfortunately, the move afterwards, pretty much straight after, was Gordon being fouled by Hanko. We got a free kick. Hanko's the centre back that's just signed from Feyenoord from about 30 odd million. He got a yellow card because of it. So he got the ball in the centre of the park. He moved it quite nicely out of Joe Linton. He's caught late. Joe Linton then finds Ashby, who again beats his man, gets the ball past his man, but he's brought down. Newcastle get the free kick. Fired in low by Trippier. It's a really smart save from Jan Oblak, but it's probably one that you expect Jan Oblak to make. The ball went out, not out for a corner, just out to the far side. Great little ball from Harvey Barnes to get the ball back into the danger area, and it's Joe Linton again who leaps and just a little glance and header, tries to get it into the back bottom corner, but unfortunately ability just wasn't really there on the day. Joe Linton's finishing was pretty atrocious today. Speaking of which, he hits the bar with his third effort. Alanga, I think he beat the fullback Rigari about 4 times in 5 minutes. The last time he finally got a free kick, Trippier fired in what was actually a really delightful cross. And Joe Linton's header just scrapes the ball. Just couldn't get under it enough. It was just a bit too over it. And then pretty much had the same issue with the next attack. Joe Linton probably could have had a hat-trick within 10 minutes in that first half. His next header, pretty much same situation. Alanga gets to the byline, I think. I can't remember if it's Alanga who puts a cross in, but the ball comes to him about 4 or 5 yards out. He just heads it straight down at Oblak. Gets too good of a contact on it, if anything, in that moment. And I guess that's why he wasn't the striker we needed when we signed him for 40 million. But I do just want to say, I know I've said the last couple of minutes have sounded probably quite harsh on Joe Linton. It was a decent first half performance. He was just let down by his finishing, and as a box-to-box midfielder, I'm okay with that most of the time. When it leads to the team losing 2-0 and you've got your central midfielder missing, let's say, 2 good chances, the other 3 were probably half chances, then at the end of the game, your mindset's completely different to what it is at halftime at 0-0. But at that point, I've just mentioned that was the halftime. First half's going to be a bit longer. Obviously, I thought, quite good in that first half. Second half, pretty abysmal, but I will get onto that. For now, I'm going to go to our first, and only advert of the episode, and that one is from Bioniq.
Your body is unique, and Global Sports Podcast Network has partnered with Bioniq, the world's most personalised supplements. Bioniq provide 100% tailor-made supplements designed to deliver precisely what your body needs at exactly the right levels to optimise your health. No guessing. So click the link in the show notes. Use the code GSPN 2025 for 40% off your first month's subscription. Bioniq. Don't settle for off-the-shelf solutions made for just anybody. Get what's right for you right now.
Excellent stuff. So at half-time, there was one change made by Newcastle United, and that was that Sven Botman was substituted for Alex Murphy. Similar to what it was a few weeks ago, I think it was substituted as a precaution. With Anthony Gordon going off at the end of the game, we certainly hope it's just a precaution. Otherwise, a fun little Sela Cup friendlies potentially led to 2 of our best players being out for the first game of the season. But yeah, it didn't take long for Atletico to take the lead in the second half on a beautiful counter-attack, to be honest. Actually, it was probably more our errors than anything else. Anthony Gordon's caught napping after a couple of errors at the back, not really communication was probably lacking. Atletico just hit us with pace. Alex Buena and Julian Alvarez linked beautifully with a 1-2. Alvarez into Buena, and then Buena, while being closed down by Tonali, just puts in a beautiful little through ball to the point where Pope and Tonali can't do anything about it. And well, Alvarez couldn't really miss. So yeah, that was 1-0 to Atletico. I do have to say, Sandro Tonali trying to get back, busting a gut. It's the bare minimum that you expect, really. But when you see a player, even in a friendly, giving 120%, it's great to see, particularly when there's the issues with Alexander Isak at the moment. But I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about Newcastle Atleti. So yeah, at 1-0, Atletico pretty much changed everything up. They made 10 changes on the 60th minute. I'm not going to go through them all, but two of them do combine to make it 2-0 about 2 minutes later, actually. It's sort of a long ball up to Alexander Soloth, who, if you've listened to this podcast where we've spoken about transfers, I'm a great admirer of. I think he's an absolutely fantastic player. He shows great composure just to hold the ball up. For some reason, we've got three defenders in literally about a 10-yard radius. Maybe less, probably less actually. I guess we were worried about the bursts of pace in the first half, and then when Solof's come on, we've not really changed things up a little bit, because although he's got that little bit of pace where he can, beat one man, you certainly don't need 3, 1, 2, 3 here, right there. So it's one of those where realistically you're looking at it and going, you could have had Alex Murphy out a little bit further, and that stops him from making that pass to Griezmann. But he does make the pass to Griezmann, and Griezmann has a pretty delightful little poke of the ball and knocks it past Pope. Pope gets a hand on it, but the reflexes just aren't there enough to give him a strong hand. And Griezmann scores at the stadium that he's won thousands of games on Football Manager. If you'd ever like to play there again in a black and white shirt, I'm sure Newcastle United would be more than happy to have him. But yeah, excellent player. The issue with the game is I can spend the whole time here saying that Atletico Madrid were absolutely fantastic in the second half, how good their players are. But the reality was that we were really, really scrappy in that second half, and it'll be a big concern to Eddie Howe, because fitness is realistically all that matters in these pre-season games. We weren't at it at all in that second half. We were beaten to every single ball, and it's all right. You can say that after the 60th minute when they make 10 changes, and they've got fresh legs the whole time. But to not really be at it in the 55th minute when you've all played pretty much the same minutes is probably unacceptable. And he will say that. He'll let them know. But yeah, Atletico dominated the second half. They converted their chances. Newcastle had the better of the first. We just didn't take ours, which is fine. It does just mean that we've gone the whole pre-season without a win, which will be worrying, and it does emphasise the need for a striker very, very soon. But I'll get onto that again a bit later. We tried switching things up a bit towards the end, with Alanga going central, Gordon went onto the left, Barnes on the right. In theory, that should be electric, but when you're against a low block, it wasn't really a low block, but they were playing pretty much 5 at the back, with a bit more of a higher line, but realistically we couldn't get behind them. Just because whenever we tried to, that ball was either poor or we just didn't really have the legs. And when you're playing against Atletico Madrid, 5 at the back, Barnes, Gordon and Alanga is not really the front three you want to see. But again, it's a friendly against Villa when it's going to be a higher paced game, fast paced. We're going to be against the run of play most of the game. That front three would have been pretty good. Unfortunately, the worst moment of the day comes about 10 minutes before the end. Anthony Gordon pulls his hamstring, and it likely means that Anthony Alanga or William Asula will start up front against Aston Villa. I would probably suggest it's going to be Alanga, and we'll see Barnes, Alanga and Jacob Murphy as the front three. That's my early call. It's what I would personally do, just because, as I mentioned, we're probably going to be backs against the wall for a lot of that game. You need electric counter-attacking pace to be able to pull off those kind of wins, to pull off wins in those games. And we all know what Barnes and Jacob Murphy can do against the run of play. So that's for me. Gordon, the positive is that when he was walking off the pitch, he didn't have too much of a limp. If anything, it was more of a frustrated power walk. So it doesn't look disastrous, but I think if you're ready, how you're looking at that and going, how disastrous could that injury have been for Newcastle? And Anthony Gordon out for 6 months, and that derails a lot of your campaign, particularly with we're expecting Alexander Isak to leave. But then the final bit of the game, really, Nick Pope makes an excellent save to stop it being 3-0 to Atletico. The ball comes out to Sadio on the edge of the box, and he wraps his foot around it and puts it. He's putting it in the top corner. It's an excellent save from Nick Pope. Do have to say, in a proper game, Sadu probably would have seen red, same as Joe Linton against Spurs. But these are the physical games that Eddie Howe wants us to have. And what we learned is that Atletico Madrid simply are better than us right now. And you know what? That's fine. I'm not too disheartened by that, because they are an excellent, excellent side. Who, to be honest, I really don't want to play in the Champions League after that. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the game. I'll go into player ratings. I'll do a quick player ratings for each player, and I'll just give you an insight on how I thought each player played. So Nick Pope, I've started off with a 6.5. He made some good saves. He was probably at a 6, maybe leaning closer to a 6 than a 6.5 before that save towards the end. But in that spell where Atletico were, very strong in the middle of the first half, he made 2 or 3 good saves. The issue for me again is footwork. He made a mistake in both halves with the ball at his feet, and off what I've heard from Ramsdale's performance yesterday, unfortunately I did miss the debut, as I said. It certainly won't have helped his case to start next Saturday. He couldn't do anything for either of the goals, but when your number 2, or 1.5, should I say, as he was at Arsenal alongside Raya, he'll probably be the same here. When your 1.5 is, to be fair, having a great game with a penalty save, and then a little bit of PR afterwards as well, where a young Ben gets, I don't know if it's hit with a ball, but he gets hurt in the crowd. Ramsdale gives his shirt to him straight away. You're sitting there and going, this guy gets it. The crowd's going to be behind Ramsdale if he starts. It's one of those where Eddie Howe's already got a decision to make. While I think before this weekend, maybe, just maybe, he was sitting there thinking, I could probably embed Ramsdale a little easier. I do think it'll be Pope that starts against Aston Villa, but Ramsdale's definitely done himself a few favours this weekend. Trippier, I am going to go for 6.5 again. I wanted to go 6, but I think that's just recency bias in my brain. First 30 minutes, I thought he was excellent, but his influence in the game certainly faded, and he really struggled in that second half. So I could have easily gave him a 6, but I am going to stick with a 6.5. Lascelles, I'm going to give him a 6. Defensively, he was pretty sound, suspect with the ball at his feet, as we expect. But I do think on another day he gives away a penalty. When Tino Livramento makes the mistake, he pushes the Atleti striker in the back. And realistically, it's a penalty all day long. In the Premier League, it's a penalty. So, 6 for Jamal Lascelles. Botman, I've given 6.5. To be honest, his rating probably would have gone up if I'd done these at the end of the game. But I did Botman's at half time. It was a really poor second half, and it made Botman look so much better because we were so solid with him in that back line at the first half. And then when he was replaced with Alex Murphy, we looked terrible. So you're sitting there thinking, is Botman the difference there? Probably not. Probably Atletico just played a lot better in that second half, but it makes Botman look so much better. And Tino Livramento on the left, I've gave him a 5, and to be honest, I kind of wanted to give him lower. It was probably the worst game I've seen him have by his standards. Usually, he's pretty exceptional in that left back position, and if you're going to have a bad game, have it in pre-season. So I'm not too bothered. But he looked very awkward on the ball. I thought his movement wasn't the greatest. I don't know if he was playing with a bit of a knock, but he just seemed a bit awkward and a bit clumsy. Much like I would have expected Matt Targett to after just getting off the flight back from Korea after everyone else. That's a joke. I didn't fall for Francis Chipper. But yeah, it's a difficult one. But yeah, not Tino's greatest game. I'm sure he'll bounce back. It was just a friendly. He's usually brilliant for us. Then on to a player that I never thought I would say has impressed me in a Newcastle shirt, and that is Harrison Ashby. It was a quiet-ish first half if you compare his play to a central midfielder, which is where he played. But we've played a lot of our play sort of down the left with Tonali and Joe Linton, and then we wanted to get it out to the right-hand side for Alanga. But every time Ashby was on the ball, he was very composed. He put quite a few tackles in from what I remember. And generally, every time I heard his name from contact, I was going, actually, that was quite good. And for a player that I thought was destined to go on loan to probably a top League One side or a mid-table championship, once again for the third year in a row, he actually played quite well. I don't want to see him starting there in the Champions League, obviously. But yeah, Harrison Ashby actually had a really good game today for me. So yeah, maybe he does have a future in black and white. And so then from Ashby to a player who I hope never leaves the black and white, Sandro Tonali. Gave Sandro Tonali a 7. I probably could have gave him more. I think if it's a win, you probably give him an 8 or an 8.5, but he was definitely the best of a bad bunch. He was our best player on the pitch. He's so tidy, gives 120% every single game, as I mentioned, and it was a good performance against really tough opposition. So yeah, Sandro, ole, ole, ole. Then to a player who is one of my favourites, but ultimately didn't have a good game today, and that's Joe Linton. 5.5 is what I've gave him. I could have gave him less. I could have gave him more. It just depends on how you look at the performance. He had a good first half. I thought on the ball he was a bit sharper than what he normally is. He had a few good turns in our own half to sort of get us off the press. And I genuinely thought his all-round play was arguably some of the best we've seen in a while. And then you have the 4 chances where realistically every shot is coming to Joe Linton and he's missing the target more often than not. He's not a goal scorer, we know that. But if we're going to lose Isak, which it looks like we're going to, our midfield players need to be more clinical. And for that, I think Howe is going to have to be harsher on these players in those positions. But he's not the only one. He's just the example from today, unfortunately. Alanga makes me laugh because I'm realizing after every game, I'm realizing more and more that he's going to be one of the most frustrating players I've ever seen in a Newcastle shirt. A bit like Alan Saint-Maximin, because when it comes to dribbling and getting past players, he's definitely one of the best I've seen in black and white. But then when it comes to hitting the first man with every cross or shot, he's up there with the likes of Florian Thauvin, Remy Cabella. Yeah, it's Kieran Trippier for that spell when he was on corners and hit the first man every game. Yeah, it's frustrating. But what I will say It was pre-season, as I've already said. And if you can fine-tune that man's final product, 55 million is a bargain, because that Ruggeri, who played for Atletico Madrid, he played for Atlanta last season before as well, and he was absolutely fantastic in a league where they have a lot of decent wingers. So realistically, looking at it, he probably gave them a harder game than I've seen anyone else. So for me, it was very good performance by Alanga. Just needs to fine tune that final product, and he'll be fantastic. I will say, second half he was a bit non-existent, but that first half was great. And then on to the final two starters. I'm going to start with in the centre with Anthony Gordon. I gave him a 5.5, unfortunately. And I will say, if Anthony Gordon's performances up front were as good as his PR has been in recent weeks, we'd have a 30-goal a season striker. Because honestly, the PR has been fantastic. It seems like everyone's forgotten about how they felt, about what I was seeing being read before the Man City game. And don't get me wrong, I love the fact that Anthony Gordon's in a Newcastle shirt, but we know that he wanted to leave. And yes, he went about it in a better way, but he went about it in the way that you would expect someone to. That's about it. But in the actual game today, he looked somewhat dangerous at times. So when we won the break in the first half, every time he got the ball, you were thinking, all right, he's going to do something here. And sometimes he did. His press was okay as well. Final product wasn't bad. But it is so obvious that he is not a striker. And if he is, he's not a striker that works in our system. Yeah, it doesn't work there for us, unfortunately. I did think in the short spell that he was on the left, he looked so much better, which is annoying because I think two of our better players are sat there on the left in Barnes and Gordon. But yeah, on to Barnes, I ended up giving him a 5, just because I thought he started well in the first half, but genuinely, it got 65 minutes into the second half. And I actually had to look to see if he'd been substituted because I don't think he touched the ball, and I couldn't see him on the pitch. So it was a bit of a worry. In fact, it was when Gordon moved out to the left, I thought we'd made a substitution at half time that I'd not mentioned. So yeah, it was a worrying one for Barnes. I tipped him to have a brilliant pre-season. It hasn't been great at all for him. The signs of excellence, just not consistent enough for me. And then the two youngsters, Murphy and Harrison, I've gave them both 5s as well. I wanted to give Alex Murphy lower, but I really hate being harsh on youngsters. It was a bad performance for him. But again, we've put him in at the deep end against Bukayo Saka for Arsenal, and then we've put him in the deep end against Julian Alvarez, Antoine Griezmann, and Alexander Soloff. So you know what? I'm not going to judge him too much on that game. It was a bad performance, but you know, it's one of those where we'll probably see him have some excellent games. There is signs of a good young centre back in there. He just needs to keep it up. And if he can keep his head high and learn from experiences in these kind of games, he could be very, very good. Or at least he could be Premier League standard. Because he was very good when he was on loan at Bolton. They loved him there. If he can sort of continue to grow, he could well play in the Premier League for Newcastle in the next 3 years or so. But he's not at that level yet, unfortunately. And then Alfie Harrison, I gave him, as I said, I mentioned it, I gave him a 5. As well, he just couldn't impact the game when he came on. Didn't really see him do all that much. Didn't seem to get involved. The game just seemed to pass him by. And it's not from a want of trying. You could see he was making the moves to try and get on the ball. He was trying to close players down, but just didn't work for him today. And unfortunately, he came on when the whole team was playing bad. And that's pretty much how that goes. If you come on when the whole team's playing bad, it's quite more often than not, it means you don't play very well either. And then Leo Shahar and Sean Neve, they both came on with like 10 minutes to go, so I can't really give them anything. The two exciting prospects, I want to see more of them. I wanted to see more of Murphy and Harrison as well, and that hasn't really worked out. The player I didn't want to see more of was Harrison Ashby, and now I do. So that's probably the only positive from that game. Maybe that and Alanga's dribbling. But all in all, Atletico Madrid fully deserved their win. They won the Sela Cup. First team other than Newcastle United to do so. What a prestige for them. I'm sure that goes up there with the La Liga title. Of course it doesn't. But yeah, they're a fantastic side. Atletico Madrid are definitely the best team to play in red and white. And the only team that play in red and white that I actually remotely like. So, fantastic side. I really don't want to play them in the Champions League. But we'll find out at the end of this month whether or not we do or not. Tomorrow, as for the podcast, should I say it? For tomorrow, you'll see Ian and I doing a roundup of the weekends. That'll go up on Monday. And then the rest of the team will go through a few more elements at the end of the week. But yeah, that's pretty much that. For now, it's goodbye, good night, and of course, winless Newcastle go yet another game without a win, but we're just saving it all for the Premier League. It's gonna be fine, I think.
Every club,
every day.
the Global Sports Podcast Network.